Just look around you. From your phone case to the dashboard in your car, we're literally surrounded by plastic. And it all seems so simple, right? Maybe even a little disposable. But the truth is, behind every single one of those objects is this incredibly complex manufacturing ballet, where just one tiny misstep can ruin the whole thing. So let's dive in and investigate.
I mean, you've been there, right? You buy something new, get it home, and it just feels off. Maybe it's a new container lid that doesn't quite snap shut, or a kid's toy that feels just a little too flimsy. Well, that feeling, it's not just in your head, it's the real-world result of a tiny, tiny error in a process that demands nothing less than absolute perfection.
Yeah, you've probably seen a ton of these flaws without even knowing what they were called. A warped lid, a weird-looking burn mark, maybe a little crack near a seam. Or how about those super annoying, sharp little edges on some plastics? These aren't just cosmetic boo-boos. They're actually clues, little breadcrumbs telling us that something went wrong somewhere in the creation process. All right, so here's our game plan for this little manufacturing investigation. First, we'll figure out what a perfect product even is. Then, we'll check out when good plastic goes bad. We'll diagnose the defects, look at the path to perfection, and finally, we'll go searching for flaws that you can't even see. Okay, let's kick things off. Section 1, the perfect plastic product. I mean, what does perfect even mean in this context? So here's the thing. Getting that perfect plastic part, it's not an accident. Not at all. It's this incredibly delicate balancing act. You need the exact right materials, a smart design, a perfectly engineered mold, and a machine that's dialed in with insane accuracy. If you mess up even one of those things, well, the whole thing just falls apart. Which, of course, brings us to the crime scene. Section 2, when good plastic goes bad. Let's take a look at the gallery of common defects. These are the things that keep manufacturers up at night.
Okay, first up in our lineup of defects, something called flash.
Oh, you've definitely seen this. It's that thin, kind of sharp little wafer of extra plastic you find on the edge of a part. It's a total dead giveaway that some of the molten plastic actually escaped the mold. Why? Well, it's usually either because the mold is getting old and worn out, or the injection pressure was just cranked up way too high. All right, next up, we've got a more subtle clue: sink marks. So sink marks are those little craters or dips you might see on the surface. What's happening here is pretty interesting. A thick part of the plastic is cooling down too slowly, so as it shrinks, it actually pulls the surface material, which is still soft, inward with it. It's a classic sign that either the cooling process or the pressure just wasn't right. And our third suspect in the lineup, the very obvious burn mark. Yep, these are exactly what they sound like. Those ugly black or brownish scorch marks on the plastic. So what's the cause? Well, believe it or not, it's trapped air. Air gets stuck inside the mold, gets compressed like crazy, and heats up so fast that it literally burns the plastic. It can also happen if the plastic itself was just way too hot going in. Okay, so we've seen the evidence. Now it's time to figure out the cause. Let's move on to section 3, diagnosing the defects. Where is all this stuff actually going wrong? So the whole injection molding process really boils down to 5 key stages. First, you have the injection, where the molten plastic gets shot into the mold. Then, the mold has to fill completely. After that comes packing and holding, where we keep the pressure on to make up for any shrinkage. Then, of course, cooling, so the part can solidify into its final shape. And last but not least, ejection, where the brand new part gets pushed out. The tricky part? A defect can pop up at any one of these stages. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. This chart really shows you the razor's edge these manufacturers are walking on every single day. Look at this. If your temperature is too low, boom, you get an incomplete part. Too high, you're looking at burn marks and flash. What about pressure? Well, if it's too low, you get those sink marks we talked about. Too high, the whole thing warps or you get more flash. Even something as simple as cooling time is a trade-off. It is a constant, super high-stakes balancing act. So, with a process that sensitive, how in the world do you win this balancing act? Well, you do it by running every single part through a relentless quality control gauntlet. Which brings us to section 4, the path to perfection. A really solid quality control process is like a 4-stage gauntlet. It all starts with the inputs, right? Checking the raw materials, making absolutely sure you're using pure, top-quality plastic resins. Then, while it's in production, every single variable, temperature, pressure, time, is constantly being monitored. Once the part is actually made, it gets inspected for any visual flaws, and of course, tested for strength and safety. And believe it or not, it's still not over until that product is packaged securely enough to get to you without a scratch. But here's a thought. What if the biggest, most dangerous flaws are the ones you can't even see? This brings us to our final section, beyond the naked eye. I mean, spotting visible defects is one thing, but what about the stuff hidden deep inside the plastic? I'm talking about tiny air bubbles, microcracks, or impurities that are just buried in there, basically a ticking time bomb waiting to cause a failure later on. So, how do you find a ghost in the machine? And when you look at something like this, a technical diagram of the injection molding machinery, you start to get a real sense of just how insanely complex this all is. Deep inside that process, under all that heat and pressure, it's really easy for tiny air bubbles to get trapped, or for stress to create these tiny fractures that are completely 100% invisible from the outside. Well, the answer is basically high-tech forensics. Technicians use these amazing tools like ultrasonic testing. They send high-frequency sound waves right through the plastic, and by analyzing the echoes that bounce back, they can create a map of the inside of the part. It's like sonar for plastic, and it lets them find those hidden voids, cracks, or impurities with incredible precision. So when you boil it all down, the main takeaway is this. Creating that thing you think of as a simple plastic object is anything but simple. Perfect products are never an accident. They're always the result of that delicate balance between design, materials, and process, all watched over with constant vigilance. So, the next time you pick up your remote control or a water bottle, or really any plastic item at all, I want you to take a second look. Are you going to see just a simple, boring object, or will you see the story behind it? This incredible, complex battle against heat, pressure, and time, all fought just to achieve a state of silent, unnoticed perfection.